Are you learning all about CSS Basics for Beginners and want to know what the CSS text styling is, how to use it, and how it's used in real-world projects? If so, you're in the right place. Hi, Martin here from MDP Web Development. Today we'll be working on a project that we'll use as a reference project throughout the Web Development for Beginners playlist. Don't forget to check out the playlist from the start to get a better understanding of HTML and our reference project. It's updated each week with new videos. Be sure to stick around to the end to see how to get the project files on GitHub to use throughout this playlist. I'll link to important videos there also. There's a link in the description down below to the GitHub repository where all the source code is. Let's get started.
Before we go on, be sure to watch the Visual Studio Code Editor video. It explains how to get and set up VS Code for use in the Web Development for Beginners playlist. And also watch the video on creating your first web page. I'll link to them in the description below. Here's a summary to get you started. First, create a folder on your desktop and call it Reference Project. Next, download and install Visual Studio Code Editor for your operating system from the link in the description. Open VS Code, then open this folder and create a new file called index.html. In the file content, type an exclamation mark and hit enter. This should create a new standard document for you. Open the file from the desktop folder and it should be a blank page as we have not put any content in it yet. If you get stuck, just watch these videos first.
CSS text styling. Text can be styled in many ways with CSS, such as text color. We can define color names, hex values, and RGB, red, green, blue. And we can also set the background color of text. Text alignment. Text alignment means where we want the text to be placed, left, right, or center on the page. Left if we want it on the left. Right will align everything onto the right. And center, like on mobile, everything is centered. You can see all the text in the middle. And justify just means expand all the text so that it meets the borders left and right. It looks nice and square on the edges. Text decoration. Text decoration has a few different attributes. You can change the line, the style, the thickness, or none. You might use text decoration none for lists if you want to create a list of items and you don't want the little 1, 2, or 3 or bullet point on the side. You can go text decoration none. Text transformation. We can transform all text to uppercase, lowercase, or capitalize it. This is very handy for product titles or any titles that you want, always uppercase, whatever they're typed in. We can see here for HTML, this is a paragraph of text. We can see the P element and the closing tag. Here we can see some CSS. The P paragraph element is set to color blue, text align left to keep it on the left, text decoration underline, and text transformation uppercase. We can see what it looks like on the bottom, where we can see it's blue, it's on the left, it's underlined, and it's actually all uppercase. We can see on the top the paragraph is normal case, but then the CSS has text transform uppercase. CSS fonts. So it's a good idea to set the default CSS fonts in all projects on the web. We can do this by using the font family. We have many different fonts available: Arial, Verdana, Tahoma, Georgia, or Garamond, and many others. These are all just different types of fonts and look slightly different on your screen. One very important thing for the internet is font fallback. We'll say if some browser or somebody's laptop doesn't have one of these fonts available, then it'll fall back to the next available font. Here we can see the preferred font is Tahoma, and if that's not available, it'll fall back to Verdana. And if Verdana is not available, it'll fall back to sans serif. And we can have font styles, normal, bold, or italic. You might have italic on emphasized words, or bold on headings of categories, etc. Font size is very important. We can set using pixels or EM. Here we can see body font family is Tahoma, Verdana, and sans serif. So the fallback will happen if Tahoma is not available, it'll use Verdana. And if Verdana is not available, it'll use sans serif. We can see the font style set to normal and font size set to 16 pixels. Pixels are tiny dots on your computer display, and it's not easy to change your font size if you have all these pixel values throughout your CSS. Each pixel is a tiny little dot, and they're red, green, blue. EM. One EM is the font size you've set as default, and it's easy to change. We'll say you set your default font size to 16 pixels, and then somewhere in your CSS you set all paragraph to 1 EM. We'll set the paragraph to 16 pixels. Or if you say 2 EM, we'll set the paragraph to 32 pixels. This is very handy as it can change everything on your site, entire look and feel, just by changing your default font size of 16 pixels, because everything else reads the EM. You can set your default font size to 16 pixels, like so. Font size, 16 pixels. This is 16 pixels, 1 EM. You can see on the right, if we go down into the CSS somewhere and change our font size to 1 EM, it stays at 16 pixels. Now the font is going to be 32 pixels. We have set the font size to 2 EM. This can be very handy and applied to everything, not just font size. We can set it to padding size, margins, and other things. So that if we change the font size in our document, all other attributes of the document will also change style to suit. Hi, before we move on, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Thank you.
So now we're going to open Visual Studio Code and our project, and a browser window on the right to preview our project. It's going to go to our desktop and double click on Visual Studio Code. Then we're going to go to the Explorer view and open folder. And mine is on the desktop, so I'm going to go Desktop, Reference Project, select Folder. And here we can see we have our HTML file. If we open the browser view, we can see the reference project folder and the index.html file we created. Now to see the browser window on the right, if you have the live server extension installed, you'll see Go Live button down here on the bottom. And if you haven't, you just have to go out to your desktop, open the folder, and click on the index.html file. So once you've clicked on that file, we're just going to click this Go Live button here. And that'll start up a new browser server window for us. So a handy shortcut for Windows to put something on the left and right is to press the Windows key and then right or left arrow and release the Windows key. Then select the one you want on the left or right. So I'll close this panel. So another handy shortcut for Windows is the zoom key. If you press CTRL, then the plus to zoom in and negative to zoom out. So we can see here we have our Windows browser on the right. So the only difference if we had to open this manually on the desktop and click on the file is if we make changes on the left in our code editor, you would have to click refresh on the right to see it.
So let's go ahead and set the font and some other properties in our CSS in our reference project. We'll set the body font, we'll set the H2 font and the paragraph size. So here we have our project and our browser window side by side. I'm going to go to the Explorer view and we'll open the index page I would also open the CSS My Styles page. We can see here we have the index page with all our sections. And in the CSS we can see here we have the HTML colors as we set previously. So let's go up to the top of this page, make a bit of space, we'll put our CSS here. So first, let's set the font for the body. So we're going to reference the body element by typing body, open and close curly brackets. First we'll set our font family. We'll use Tahoma, Verdana and Sans Serif. And we'll use the fallback as well. If one isn't available, it'll fall back to the next. So if we start to type font hyphen family, we can see here VS Code will autocomplete if you hit enter. Now let's type in Tahoma, comma, and our next choice will be Verdana, comma, and our final fallback choice will be Sans Serif. Now we can see there on the right hand side, if you save your project and refresh your browser, you'll see the font has changed. Let's just confirm the font has changed by removing this font line and watch the browser on the right hand side when we save our project. And the font has changed. You might have to click save on your project or file save or refresh on your browser. Now I'll just put that back. Next, let's set the font style to normal. Some of these things aren't strictly necessary as they're in the user agent style sheet, which is a default style sheet also. We'll come to that later. Font style, normal. Now let's set the font color. We'll just go color, hit enter. We can see the semicolon. And we'll just type black. And we can see no difference. So let's make sure this color works. We'll just type a different color, green. Now we can see all our font. If you save your project and refresh your browser, we can see all the font is now green. Notice the links, of course, aren't green because they're not font, they're links. So let's just set that back to black. And if you're in VS Code and you decide you like a different color, you can hover over here and you can drag the color dial to whatever color you'd like your font to be. You can do this for any color in VS Code. We'll set it to a lighter shade of dark. And we can see our text color has changed. We can see here that VS Code has given us the RGB value, red, green, blue. Red is set to 95. Green in the middle is set to 86. And blue is set to 86. That gives the color we can see on our screen. Next, let's set the font size. This is very important. Now it's standard to set to 16 pixels. Remember, pixels are just tiny dots on your computer screen. And that's the default, so we notice no change. So let's set it to a different size and see what the font looks like. Let's set it to 10 pixels. We can see all our font has decreased in size. You might need to save your project, file save, or refresh your browser. We can see a much smaller font. And of course, if we set it to 100 pixels and click save, the font gets massive. So let's just reset that back to 16 pixels. Save and refresh in your browser. Next, we're going to align our text. Again, this is done automatically in default user agent style sheets, which we can't see at the minute. But let's just set it here. We look at user agent style sheets further on. Let's go text align, text hyphen align. And we're going to go standard is left. So of course we notice no difference. Let's change that to right. And we can see now, if we click Save on our project and refresh in the browser, all our text is aligned over to the right-hand side of our page. So let's just set that back to left. There we go. Next, we're going to look at font weight, text transform, and text decoration. So let's pick an element for this. We'll pick the H2 element, heading elements. We can see them here. Here's one, HTML reference. Another one here, CSS reference. Another one here, JavaScript reference. So we're going to go to our CSS and we're going to type H2. And if we hit enter, vscode will do our brackets for us. So first we'll set the font weight to bold. And we can see nothing has changed. That's because this is already a default in the user agent style sheet in most browsers. So let's set it to a different value just to see. We can see it has now gotten thin. We've set it to 200. Let's just put this back to bold for now. Next, let's set the text transform to uppercase for all H2s. That means instead of this being lowercase reference here, this entire H2 will be all uppercase. We go text hyphen transform, and you can see VS Code will autocomplete if you hit enter. And we're going to go uppercase. And if you save your project and refresh your browser, you can see here now that the H2 for HTML reference is all now uppercase, even though in the HTML has been set to lowercase. This is very handy if we want everything in one particular area or element to be uppercase, no matter what it's typed as. Next, let's look at text decoration. So again, on our H2, let's type text hyphen decoration this time. And we're going to go for the default none. So we'll notice no change. This is in our default style sheet. So now let's see what we have available here. Let's just try underline. This will underline all H2s. Again, you might need to click save on your project or refresh on your browser. We can see here the H2 is now underlined. And also here in CSS reference H2, all H2s are now underlined. So I don't really want it as underlined for the minute because that usually signifies a link. So let's just put it back to normal or none. Now, you might need to click save on your project or refresh on your browser. So now we're going to look at font size. Let's pick a different element this time. Why not the paragraph element? We can see here on the browser, this is a paragraph of text. So we're going to go to our CSS and P for paragraph. Open and close curly brackets. Now, remember we've set the font size up here to 16 pixels. So we're going to go in here now and we're going to set, to start with, we'll set the font size for paragraph. If we wanted to change it to a different size than the default, to 1 EM and see what that does. Font hyphen size 1 EM and save and refresh on our browser. And of course there's no difference because that's the same as the default font we have up set to 16 pixels. So since we have a default size of 16 pixels for the font, and 1 EM is the default font, if we put 2 EM, the font should double in size because that means the font will now be 32 pixels, twice 16. And if you click save on your project and you're fresh in your browser, you can see now on the right hand side all our font has gotten much bigger. So of course, if we set it to 3 EM, it gets bigger again. That's very handy. We can set not just the font, the paragraph, but we can set padding or margins or thickness of lines to EM. So when you update your site, we'll say for mobile, you might have desktop, you might have 16 pixels default font. Then you might decide on mobile, you need to reduce that to 15 to 14 pixels. So the screen doesn't look too cluttered, and everything else will also follow suit if we set everything size-wise to EM. So let's just put this back to 1 EM and save on our project and refresh on our browser.
So to get the files used in this example, the HTML reference project, just go to the GitHub link that's down in the description of this video. You can have a look at it here. So a GitHub repository is just a location on the internet hosted by a company called Git that most developers like to share or store their code in, either for their own use or to share with other developers. The repository on GitHub is just a folder used to store code or files, etc. Let's have a look at each folder. So when we're in the repository here, you can see the name of the repository there, actions along the top. You can see the main folder here, and there's a README file too. So if you want, you can just click onto the folders and see what's inside them and download the code from there. But to get all the code, you're going to go over here to the code button. We're going to click and download zip file. Once that's downloaded, go into your downloads folder. Then we need to extract it. So we're going to Windows, you're going to right click and extract all. Now let's just have a look at these files in VS Code. So we're going to go to our desktop. We're going to open up Visual Studio Code. And now we're going to open the folder that we just extracted. Open folder on the left. And we're going to go to Downloads. And here we are. And you can see here on the Explorer view on the left, there's the folder we can click to expand. And here's the reference project folder. And here's the HTML file, so we'll click on that, and there's the code. You can use this for reference or to rebuild your project if something goes wrong.
Hi, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to drop any comments down below if you have questions. And don't forget to watch the full Web Development for Beginners playlist from the start. See you in the next video.